Are you a sad individual living under a Parisian opera house and dropping chandeliers on people's heads for fun? Well, you may want to stop because that's a crime and get yourself a podcast. How do you do that? Easy. It's with Anchor. Anchor is a totally free app and website, and you can record from your phone or your computer. You don't need fancy smancy equipment. Seriously, I have recorded podcasts from my bathtub while I was bathing. Anchor is free and super easy to use. Anchor has really simple podcasting tools. You sign up and then you start podcasting. It really is that simple. Within an hour of starting my podcast, I was already distributed on Spotify. Now I'm on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Breaker, and Radio Public. So look for the app or the website. The website is anchor.fm, and the app, just go to your friendly local app store and look up Anchor. That's ANCHOR. Happy podcasting! Hello, how are you, friends? This is Sarah from the Quiet Study Breakfast Podcast, and today we will be discussing Season 2, Episode 9, Vanishing Point of Westworld. So, let's get into it. So, this episode, kind of a bummer, huh? So, we lose, Emily and Teddy. Emily is shot by Billy and Teddy shoots himself. I did not see the Emily thing coming, but the Teddy thing I've been kind of waiting for ever since we saw his body in the lake, sea, whatever. But is that the same Teddy? Because there was like a room full of multiple Bernards, so why wouldn't there be more of the Teddys? Why wouldn't there be more Doloreses? Why wouldn't there be more of anybody? Speaking of anybody, Clementine's back, sort of. They use her to spread a virus, and it causes a bunch of hosts to basically attack and kill each other. So they decide to try and send this out to get the hosts to attack each other and not the people. Bernard is there and is not affected, and I think that's because basically he's gained consciousness, so it doesn't affect him the same way Maeve's woo-woo powers didn't affect Ekacheta, which is really interesting. But the most interesting thing to me is that in the scene, Charlotte's watching from outside because like everybody's in this like glass box, which I'm assuming is like it'll only affect it because they would want to make sure that if anybody else were a host, just in case, because of course they'd put that thought in their heads that they want to make sure that they wouldn't like randomly attack and hurt anybody else, right? Because these people are clearly thinking that's why they have a security system with no redundancies. I will never get over that. Sorry. But anyway, so and Charlotte's watching this and she touches the back of her neck. And it's like almost an unconscious gesture. Wow, I can't talk. Right. Gesture. That's how you say that, right? I think. Okay, well, I'm confused now. Anyway, I'm just gonna go with gesture because that sounds proper. If if I'm wrong, please tell me that I am mispronouncing words. I'd really appreciate it. But anyway, so it's really interesting because it seems like a reverie, which is fascinating. Is Charlotte a host? Because if you remember, there's a thing in their cervical spine that if they move, it will explode. But let's say that, I don't know, let's just be wacky here, that if there is body swapping here, which is like my theory in the first place, only for some reason I thought that Dolores was in Bernard, which I don't think is going to happen, which, like, as much as I would be delighted to think it would, but I don't think that that's what's going on here. But let's say that they swap somebody into Charlotte Hale's body, which is a brilliant plan, by the way. I just That is just so cool. So they would make a body that it wouldn't have a chip, and apparently the only way that they could tell if somebody is a host is if they have an explosive in their neck. That's weird, but okay. So they have the Charlotte body. Well, basically, they're free to do anything, right? I mean, that's a really good plan, which probably not gonna happen. But then we're at the ninth episode, so who knows what's gonna happen at the 10th? Because I remember the season finale of last season. Uh, Wild stuff. So I'm expecting like a whole bucket of emotions. So Bernard meets up with Elsie, or does he? I'm still really confused with the timeline because they did say that he was experiencing cognitive dissonance and like he's not really understanding what's going on. So Elsie may or may not be there. She may have been there before, but isn't now. What's going on? So they go to a place called the Forge, which has all the data on the guests all in one place in code. That's where Dolores is going, that's where everybody's going. So they go and they are stopped by a bunch of dead people, which I'll get to. I think I know who they are. I might be wrong because it's kind of cut in a confusing manner. But poor Bernard starts hearing Ford's voice in his head. He's like, she's gonna betray you. They're all gonna betray you. And he's like, blah blah blah. And he says a bunch of stuff that like I couldn't get the subtitles to work, so I'm not sure. But it sounded like he said Tim Shell. If anybody knows what that means, please enlighten me, because I must have heard. Then he said, thou maced. It was really weird. But anyway, so Bernard gets his little iPad thing and he basically plugs himself in, and after like strapping him to the wheel to make sure that he won't like do anything untoward towards Elsie, and then basically it deletes Ford's file. And you know how before Bernard's cornerstone, like his basic reason for existence, was his son, now it's Ford. So now he has no cornerstone, apparently. And I find that very interesting. So anyway, Elsie comes back and she like didn't find any bullets or anything, and Bernard's like, whoops, gotta leave you behind, girlfriend, sorry. And she's like, what the fuck? And he's like, well, I want to make sure I won't hurt you. Okay, bye. And then leaves, which Elsie, sweetheart, if there's a potentially killer robot who says that he doesn't want to harm you, just let him go and don't tell him to go fuck himself. I mean, come on, that should be common sense, right? Right. So, Billy and Emily, before Emily is killed, have very awkward moments, and this episode basically is focusing on what happened to Juliet, like what led up to her killing herself. And basically, what happened is that they had an unhappy marriage. Like, from outside, they had everything, but Billy's just not a great husband. There's something dark in him. And Juliet can see that, and she consoles herself with drinking. And they're at a party to celebrate some philanthropic thing that Billy did. And so they're going home, and then Billy stops at the bar, and who's there but Ford? And they kind of banter back and forth. It's flirting. No, it's not really flirting, but I mean, it's that kind of vibe. And so they start talking about Delos and the park, and there's Bill's like, no, well, they'll never meet. And he's like, oh, but they did. Dun, dun, dun. And I think that, are they talking about James Delos? I'm really confused because he says, you see what your creation has been learning? Like, is that in general the program that, like, records, I guess, data? Or was that actually James Delos? Because this, let's see, this is the night that Julia died. So it's in the first season, Billy says that it was like last year that she offed herself. So yeah, it could be. That's interesting. That just occurred to me that that's what they were talking about. Because I was going to be like, I have no idea what they were talking about. But I think that that's it. And that would make a lot of sense for his reaction. So basically, Flora talks about, oh, and this is an unflattering self-portrait, whatever, and hands him this card, which turns out to be the profile of the park. So, that's interesting. So, all through that, Billy gets home and is arguing with Juliet, and then Emily's there, and Juliet's like, oh, this is all your fault. You're a virus. You're destroying everything. You're trying to gaslight our daughter, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, fine, I'm going to bed. And then she's talking and she says like a bunch of weird stuff. Like, are you real? Is any of this real? And she's asleep. And while he thinks he's asleep, Billy starts telling her that I had this darkness in me. And it was always there. And I thought it was something that happened to me. But no, I was covering it up. And none of this is real. And I don't belong in this world. And unfortunately, it turns out that Juliet has been awake through all this, and she wakes up and she is not happy. So she sees him place the profile card into some books. Now, I had to stop this because I wanted to see the book titles, and they're very, very interesting in relation to this episode. So, hold on a second. I want to make sure I have them pulled up. So, in no particular order, we've got Jude the Obscure, which is like one of the most depressing books I have ever had the misfortune to read, and not something I would ever want in my bedroom, ever. Basically, it's about this man and this woman. They're not married. They have kids. They're shunned by society. It's just like nothing good happens, and the kid end up killing the kids and himself because he thinks that he is responsible for his parents' misery. And that's basically it. I mean, if you want to read it, more power to you, but ugh. Anyway, the next book is Moby Dick, which is about a frantic, this man's life is to hunt down this white whale, which could be a metaphor for the maze and the door, and William desperately trying to find the meaning of life. And the book that he puts the key card into, which I think that this is so interesting, and like didn't occur to me like until after I was done watching the show, and I started thinking about like how perfect this book is. So the book is Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. And what it is, it's an anti-war book, basically. Like the whole thing is like how war is stupid and pointless, and what happens is that this man is become stuck and unstuck in time. Like any minute of the time he'll be like somewhere else. And so his name is Billy Pilgrim, which Billy hates being called Billy. So I'm gonna call him Billy as much as possible because we hate him. Okay? Like, we do not like this man. Ed Harris I like. Billy, not so much. So, the book ends but it's not the chronological ending because Billy Pilgrim is stuck in time. So how it ends is he comes out of the firebombing of Dresden, which was a real event, and a man has stolen a teapot. And according to the book, this is a real event that Kurt Vonnegut Jr. witnessed, and he was executed by being put in front of the firing squad for it. What was his name? Like Edmund Darby or something like that. You could look it up, like if you're really interested. But so he comes out, he's in the sunset, and a bird tweets at him, and like that's how the book ends. And it's just really interesting when you consider Bernard's situation. Huh? Yeah. Anyway, it was one of my favorite books growing up, so I would recommend that one way over Jude the Obscure. So Juliet looks at the profile card. There's like this really nifty, like thin laptop that's like just on the desk. It's like a flat surface. It's really cool. So we found some interesting things about Billy Boy. That he's paranoid, that he's delusional, that he's something 47B. I'm not sure what that means. But also his personality. The specifics of his personality are like 0.00072. So he's a weird boy. Like there's like very few people like him. So, and the thing is that he was subject number 2, which apparently James Dulles was number 1. So apparently there's this idea of making him a host or immortal, which is weird because he hates everybody, so why would he want to be immortal? Like, this is a guy whose theme song is like, everything is awful because I'm Billy. You know, it makes no sense. But anyway, Juliet goes to the tub, she takes pills. Now, these flashbacks are weird because I swear I see blood, but when it shows a pill bottle. The water's clear when it's sloshing out of the bathtub because Emily and Billy see it from the ceiling. It's like dripping down the ceiling up, which, ugh, that was creepy. Anyway, they were talking about having Juliet committed for her drinking. And so it goes back to the supposed present day. And sorry, I'm less reacting and then explaining what happens. But the present day, and they're talking, and Billy's convinced that she's a host, and then quality assurance comes to try and help them, and they show William not being a host, which is really important to notice that, like, prior to this, 4 times he has been seen, like, messing with his arm. So, because they had, like, the hosts have the little wire doodad that they can check in their arm. So, they do the cervical test, the cervical test, and it shows that he's not a host, or at the very least, he doesn't have an explosive implanted in his cervical spine. So, could he be a host? Maybe, because the end of this episode just kind of leaves it right off. It's really weird. So, anywho, so he shoots all these guys, these nice people trying to help him, and Emily's like, these were people, and he's like, blah, blah, blah. No, I know you would notice anything because you didn't have my profile. So she pulls something out of her pocket, which very obviously is not a gun, but he shoots her anyway. He shoots his own daughter. Yes, officially, like, he's destroyed everything he ever supposedly loved. And And then he goes to cut into her arm to prove to himself that he's a host, and he sees that she has the profile card on her. And he goes into the desert and starts to begin the process of shooting himself in the head, and then stops. And then he digs into his arm with a very sharp knife. And that's his story. And we're done with Billy. So, yay. So, Teddy, sweet Teddy, is not in good shape. He hates being a cold, callous murderer. And he tells Dolores that he loves her, but he can't live like this because he's finally starting to awaken to the reality of the situation. And Dolores is scared. And he's like, I would never hurt you. I will protect you until the day I die, but I can't protect you anymore. And then he shoots himself in the head. It's so depressing. And it's like, what I want to know is, how did he get into the sea? Did it flood? Like, was that area flooded, and is that why other bodies there? Or was there another place and the bodies were taken by, like, I don't know, the Ghost Nation? Because they came across the Ghost Nation, and it was a reenactment of the season opener where Dolores shoots the member of the Ghost Nation. She's like, not all of us deserve to go to the Valley Beyond. So the Valley Beyond is apparently the Forge, which I'm pretty sure that my theory about it, like, being basically a VR, basically kind of what the Cradle is, but more intensive. Like, the Cradle would be like a holding place, but the Forge would actually allow them to be, like, live out a life. But I'm not sure how that would work because the Lord seems very against it. Like, it doesn't seem like she wants to be a part of it, but she wants to use it against the people. Like, because when she said not all of us deserve to go to the Valley Beyond, like, I didn't get the feeling she's like, I get to go there, you don't. Like, he's like, no, that's not a good place. I could be misinterpreting. I have been known to do that before. It's okay. That's the purpose of this podcast, to go over a show and basically lose my flippin' mind. Okay, this is like over 20 minutes long. Can you imagine that if I doubled up with, like, the last episode? I'm so glad I chose not to do that. And I'm sorry this episode is so ridiculously long. But let's see. Oh, Maeve and Ford. This is, like, probably one of my favorite just single scenes out of, like, this entire season. Like, I loved Kiksuya. I thought it was beautiful, but this scene was just wonderful. So Bernard sees Maeve, and he tries to get to her to drop some code into her. And Ford's like, no, it's okay. You can basically just, like, Bluetooth it to her from here. It's cool. And he's like, okay, fine. So he does. And later on, Ford is an apparition in the room with Maeve, and she is not doing well at all. Like, any moment, they're going to disconnect her. And so he starts talking to her, and he is so proud of her. And he's not jerking himself off. He's not like, I made this incredible thing. I'm so amazing. It's like, you did so much more than I ever thought you could do. You did this to save your child, and I always thought of you as my favorite, and now I'm protecting mine. And basically he tells her not to let them kill her. And then he does something to her code, which, seriously, what more could he do to her code? Like, is she going to have the power of Kamehameha? Because that would be amazing, and I would totally be here for it, no matter how unrealistic that is. Like, I would love that so much for Maeve. But anyway, so we have no idea what's gonna happen next. let's see, will Teddy rise back from the dead? Probably not. Um, is Dolores and Bernard? Probably not. Is Charlotte a host? I think so. I think that neck thing was just like a little too blatant to be a red herring. It could be like, and yeah, that's it. So, uh, I have no idea what's gonna happen next, and I'm so excited. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. Have a good day and keep it fruity.